We don't mess around here.
Goodness.
Good
Okay.
evening. Good evening. Good afternoon. Good morning. Locked and Loaded Diaries. Our people. We're here tonight with Kim Wedel, mother of Private Gregory Wedel Morales, who died at the age of 24. He was last seen August 19th, 2019, near Fort Hood, Texas. He was a major transport operator, aka truck driver in the Army. He was with 1st Cav at Fort Hood since 2016. He enlisted in the Army in June of 2015, and he was set to retire, or not retire, but he had done 5 years and he was ready to ETS honorably in September of 2019. But he didn't show up to work on August 20th. And his wife and his mother, were concerned, and they raised a red flag and said, our Gregory's missing. But I believe their backs, people turned their backs on them and said, Gregory's an adult and he can do what he wants. 10 months later, before I move on, the Army considered Gregory AWOL. And apparently this is from a soldier who doesn't miss work. If he wakes up late, he calls somebody. He's a responsible soldier. He had been in 5 years. 10 months later, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, 4 months later, somebody submitted his car, tried to submit it to CarMax for an inspection. And then 10 months later from his missing date, his remains were found off of Fort Hood. And if I'm messing up my dates, because I got a lot of dates on this piece of paper, Kim, please let me know.
Well, there's a lot of dates that we thought were right that aren't.
Oh, really? Okay. So when you start telling your story, if you want to do chronologically, that might be helpful, because obviously I can't do that. But he was just almost less than a month from getting ready to get out, and he had plans. What soldier goes AWOL, weeks from ETSing? Apparently a lot of soldiers do, from what I hear, but most do not. Nobody's going to mess that up for themselves. If you have a DD-214, which is your discharge paperwork, that's like your resume for the last 5 years. And if it's other than honorable, you're not going to get a job. You're not going to get a loan, nothing. You're going to look like a piece of crap. So why would he sacrifice, especially when he had plans and he was responsible? And then in June of 2021, more bones were found at the site where his remains were initially found. So Gregory's family thinks that they have received his whole body when they really haven't. The amount of trauma that this family has probably endured, amounts to PTSD. When a family loses a soldier, and you just mess them up every step of the way instead of holding their hand, they're going to walk away traumatized. That is normal. That is normal to be traumatized when you're treated that way. You're already traumatized from losing a child or a husband, but the trauma of being lied to and just, you know, I might be biased, but I think our military folks should be held a little bit above regular civilians. I'm sorry, I'm biased, but only 1% of our nation volunteers to serve in the military. That's not a lot. And you have to be qualified to enlist. And most Americans are not qualified, believe it or not. That's why we have to go out and recruit so hard, because there's nobody that is qualified. And if they are, you know, maybe they come from money or something like that, or they, you know, have no pride for their country and they decide to take another route. I'm sorry, I digress. And so I really expect a Gold Star family to be treated with the highest respect, like above that soldier or sailor or airman or Marine, because their child just gave their life for their country. And if you're not going to do the right thing and you're going to lie to the family, you're spitting in their face, and you're spitting in the face of every American. And I'm surprised that more Americans are not up in arms about all of the missing and dead soldiers that are popping up. Service members, all branches of the military are affected by whatever is going on in the military. That rank is so important, that retirement is so important. The good old boys club is so important that you will go to a doorstep and lie to a family member and string them along for years and not investigate properly. That causes PTSD. And that's why, Heather, you know, it was easy for you to get triggered tonight talking to Kim, because you guys all share a common bond. And you're right, you don't know when that pain's going to come up. It's going to hit you without, you know, you're not looking, and it comes right at you. You might feel like you're good. I'm having a great week. I'm having a great month. But then it just sneaks up on you. And that's okay, because that's a normal response to PTSD. And with community and people that love you, and you're grounded and you move your body, you know, you can help alleviate those symptoms, but it's always going to be there with you because it's in your body. It's part of your body now. It's a part of your nervous system. Anyway. So the case is still active investigation going on. We still do not know. Gosh, it's been 2.5 years. And a lot of these soldiers aren't even getting investigations. I don't know what happened to the other 20-something soldiers that died at Fort Hood in the summer of 2020. But we're gonna get to those family members, and we're gonna find out every single one of them. And Kim, we have Kim Wedel here tonight to talk about the death of her son, who was a soldier in the U.S. Army. Kim, if you want to start maybe with how he came to like joining the Army, and then tell us what happened to him, and then the subsequent treatment from the military or Killeen Police Department, and then where you're at now with everything. The floor is yours.
Oh, there's a lot in that. Gregory graduated in 2014 from high school, and he went to work for a local company out here, and it got really cold, and he decided that was not his calling. So he decided the military was a place to go. His dad, his grandfather, his uncles, I mean, his aunt, all were a huge military family. My dad retired at 20 years, my brother-in-law, 20 something years. It's just kind of something they all grew up with. And he had always expressed an interest in it. It was either that or being a cowboy and a bull rider. I guess the might have been safer to be a bull rider, but he worked hard because he really had to study for the ASVAB to be able to pass certain parts of it. And he was never a studier before, but it took him a long time. I mean, he worked at it, for months, which is probably more studying he did the entire time he was in school. And when he joined, he got sent to Fort Leonard Wood. And we went down, of course, when he graduated, and had the big family thing, and it was kind of exciting. And then he stayed there for AIT, which he wasn't that excited about. But right after AIT, we went down for that graduation, and he told me, sometimes he's just way too nice, but he goes, "I'm going to Korea. They're shipping me out next week to Korea. But they said since it's that I'll get to come home for Christmas." And I was like, "They're not going to send you to Korea and let you come home for Christmas. Somebody conned you." And of course, some guy there that was, got him to switch places with him, basically, so he could go somewhere else and be home for Christmas. And Greg was in Seoul, Korea, looking for Mexican food. He was so happy he found On the Border in Korea. But he spent a year there, and I was very fortunate that one of my good friends' husband was also stationed down there. So he kept an eye on him for me. And when he left to come back to the States, he gave Greg all of his stuff, pots and pans and things. I mean, but I remember Greg calling me and saying, "You literally know people everywhere." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I got to Korea, and there's Sergeant Oliver." And then when he got shipped to Fort Hood, there were some of my former students who was, came by and said, "Wedel, I know Miss Wedel. She scares me. You better behave." I was like, I don't know why I scared him, but it worked, I guess. But he's like, "Everywhere I go, there's somebody there who knows you." And I was like, I really didn't realize I had that big an impact on so many people, but I'm glad they're there to keep an eye on you. And like I said, he got shipped to Fort Hood after Korea. And he was down there, I mean, being 20, having fun, motorcycles and cars, because he's got a paycheck and no bills. And he's having a great time. We were supposed to meet him. He was supposed to get leave and meet us in Galveston in 2018. I say, when did my other son graduate? 17. So it would have been May of 17, because his brother was going into the military and at the end of May. And he didn't show. Well, apparently he went and got married. Didn't tell us. And so I said, "Well, we're going back through Colleen. We're going to go find out where he's at." And we showed up, and he finally came and met us. He never did admit he got married. It was just the weirdest visit with him. And I guess looking back now, that's about the time things started changing. He didn't call all the time. He had a family. I mean, he got an instant family, 2 little girls and a wife. So he didn't call home as much. He didn't text and talk all the time. And fast forward, they came home for a visit, and then he went to Kuwait. And then after that, we didn't talk a whole lot. He didn't really, like I said, he was just very involved in whatever he was doing in Killeen. And trying to think of keep my timeline straight. Probably June or July of 2019, he started texting and calling again. Needed help getting a car, needed help doing some stuff. Told me he was, saving up money to get a divorce. He was staying at friends' houses, and just a lot of kind of random information. And end of July, first part of August, he called and asked if I could help him get a car. And I, of course, asked him where all of his cars were, and he said they were gone. Didn't have his motorcycles, none of that. I did see a picture on his Facebook page that was him and a bunch of guys. Looked like, I don't know, looked like he was flipping gang signs and some other things, which I was like, that's not my child. I don't know what he's doing. So of course I called to fuss at him, and he, oh, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I kind of do. I understand what those signs are. I said, I don't know what you're into, but you need to find a way out and find it out fast. And I told him I'd help him look for a car. And I think it was August 19th of 2019. I tried to call him, and I ended up texting, said I'd found him a car I could afford. How was he, was he going to be able to come up and get it? Did I need to meet him halfway? What did we need to do? And he said, don't worry about it. I already got one. And he talked about this brand new Kia that he had bought. And of course, I'm asking him how. I said, how did you afford a brand new Kia? And I knew he was being kind of sketchy. He said, well, there's this thing you can do. You pay some money and they help you clean up your credit. And they were able to help me get a car. He said, but can you give me some gas money? I sent him $20, and of course he went and got it out real quick. And then the next, he had told me during all of this that he was scheduled to get out around the 10th of September, and that he was going to start processing out. He's going to try and come home, but he wanted to go enroll in school and learn to work on the big windmills, either down by Galveston or in Louisiana. And so we talked about that for a while. And I was like, that's great. It's good to have a plan. So I knew he had plans. He had planned to go to college. He wasn't going to, like you said, screw it up. He had a GI Bill coming that would help pay for all that. I won't say he was a model soldier all the time. He apparently got busted in rank a couple times for sleeping or being late. But to kind of jump ahead, when we got his headstone it has him down as a specialist, and they kept telling us he was a private. So I'm not sure if he got ranked back. I'm not sure what happened, but he suddenly got a promotion after he died. But anyway, on August 20th, Sergeant Gabriel there at Fort Hood called and asked me if I had seen or heard from Greg. And I told him no. I texted with him the night before, but I hadn't heard from him today. I'd see what I could do about tracking him down. And he just told me he hadn't shown up. He was supposed to show up for processing. They were going to take him around all the places to process out. There's so many ways I can just get off track here. I'm trying to stay on track. Going back through his Facebook page and going back through things, I mean, that's how we found out he was planning to meet up with friends the night before. And the strange thing is, in hindsight, again, a lot of things start to make sense, I guess, or else they ask more questions. But somebody whose couch he was staying on calls me out of the blue and starts telling me the last time he saw Greg. And then as the months went by, his story didn't quite add up. Just where he was going and what he was doing and why Greg was doing this. And I was just, now I think back, it was just kind of odd for some stranger to call me and start telling me about my son. So I don't know if he was fishing for information or he was trying to plant information. But of course, I gave his name to the detective once we got to that point. But I'm sorry, to stay on track. When I called Sergeant Gabriel back, I told him I couldn't find Greg. I didn't know anything about him. And he suggested I file a missing persons report. So this is where it all starts to go wrong. I called police and the phone rang forever. Nobody would pick up. It just would ring and then go dead and then ring again. And the only reason that Sergeant Gabriel and I knew each other was I had called him before to ask him to intervene because there was stuff going on between Greg and his wife. And I wanted to make sure everything was okay. But when I finally got through to somebody, the gentleman that took the report was really nice. At the time, he did tell me that that since I didn't live in Texas, I couldn't file the missing persons report, that I would have to find somebody in Texas to file it. So I was trying to find Penny, Greg's wife, to go do it. And I finally got Sergeant Gabriel to say he would call and file the missing persons report. And then it got assigned to Detective Blendon. When I called her to talk about it, she basically told me Greg was grown, an adult, he could do what he wanted, that it would be better if I got on Facebook and asked people to look for him. So basically, I needed to investigate what happened to my son. I needed to call his friends. I needed to track all this stuff down, because he was in his 20s. They really weren't going to look for him. And Sergeant Gabriel told me that they would, he was going to be marked as AWOL. And I'm like, it just doesn't make sense for him to have gone AWOL when he's getting ready to get out. There is no sense to this. And his comment to me was, you would be surprised how many people, and this has just stuck with me forever since it happened. You would be surprised how many people go AWOL right before they get out. And I told him, I said, I would be shocked if anybody went AWOL right before they were going to get out. I said, that makes absolutely no sense, to throw everything you've worked for away. And he just, I don't think he really answered me much after that. It did eventually evolve. I kept calling him to try and get information, and he was told to quit talking to me by the captain. And that if there was any questions I had, I needed to call her. And I can't remember her name. My sister looked her up, and she seems to spend most of her day selling nutrition packages and exercise programs instead of doing her work. So I'm not sure. Somebody, Captain Thomas is the name that comes to mind, but I'm not sure that's right. I talked to her one time. She shut me down. I contacted the MPs. I contacted CID. I was like, I just need to talk to somebody about how do I go about finding out, did he leave base? When did he leave base? What did he leave base in? His Kia Rio has to be on a camera somewhere. And that's when the whole camera stories started about none of the cameras work on base. which translated over to Vanessa's case. CID just, they really didn't, they didn't want to talk to me. At one point in September, they told me that they would put out a reward poster, and they never did. I have the email still that says when they were going to do it. And I just assumed they didn't tell me about it, and that was my mistake. I've now learned never assume that they did anything right. But this goes on, and I keep trying to find him. I keep calling people. I am spending day and night on Facebook and Instagram, and I don't even understand Snapchat, but I had my kids looking through that, trying to find some trace of him somewhere. We had 2 ransom requests from just great craziness. It was obvious they had no idea about my son. He's one of the hairiest people you will ever meet. And they sent me this photoshopped picture of him in this $1 million mansion in front of this 20-foot tree, saying he's fine, but it's his head on somebody else's body. It was really poor quality. But I got FBI involved in. It lasted for about a day or two. They called back and said, these are not anything we can pursue. One of them's, out of country, and the other one, I don't know what happened with that. I never did get an answer, but I had a case number, so if something happened, I could call back. And like I said, the months just keep going around, and it's actually in May of 2020, my daughter-in-law, his middle brother Nick's wife, Destiny, says, I looked it up on Carfax. She put the VIN number in to see what happened with the car, and it shows up that it was at an auction or someplace in Dallas. So of course I call CID and say, hey, we found the car, or we at least found a trace of it. The VIN shows it was in Dallas at an auction or something. And they go, yeah, we know. We've had the car since January. I came unglued. I mean, I was like, how do you not call and tell me we found his car? And you've had it for months, and nobody bothered to call and tell me that you had found it or any trace of it. They basically ignored that also. God, every part of this was so frustrating. It turns out that even that wasn't accurate. They lied about it. The car was towed 4 days after he came up missing from the cul-de-sac where his body was found. Now, I will say that there's a lot of things that went on with him buying this car that were not probably quite legal. So I don't know that they were able to, I don't know if the tow truck company didn't see a message that said, hey, this car's missing or stolen. Or if CID and the police never bothered to put anything in that said, look for this car. But they found this car 4 days and had it towed with everything he owned in it. So any evidence, anything that might have been in the car or with the car, just gone, because this car's been sent to Dallas and detailed and cleaned out and everything gone. I have people searching everywhere through cameras looking for a black Kia Rio with a paper tag from Texas. And this car is sitting at the impound lot the entire time. Colonels would call me and tell me that, it's open investigation. We really sorry. We miss him. He's such an integral part of Fort Hood, and all kinds of, it was like a script. It was like almost word for word every time somebody called me to tell me how upset they were that he hadn't been found. Other people, I find it hard to believe, but not everybody loved my child the way I do. So there were, some haters out there that would send some messages once in a while about how worthless he was or how terrible he was. He probably deserved whatever happened to him. Those were the worst. I also got to meet a lot of people who really cared about him. I'm not a good crier, sorry. When Vanessa went missing, I found out from a lot of the news stations that they didn't run his story earlier because of the word AWOL attached to his name. So they assumed as a news station, it's just another kid went missing from military. And of course, they all, they were very nice and apologized later, but they're like, it wasn't a news story because it's just another AWOL soldier. Which is part of the reason I think that all of this has come around now, that they don't declare them AWOL right at the beginning. Now they're supposed to do due diligence and search for them. I don't know. The colonel tried to make me feel better by telling me it's all because of Gregory that they changed this. I know that's not true, but maybe he had a small part in it. But again, we're still searching for him. We're looking for him. We're calling people. We're working with the news stations from everywhere from here to Texas. I've talked to Telemundo. And I know he is up in heaven laughing his rear end off because he knows I hate public speaking. And the fact that I have to talk about him on TV, I'm sure he thinks is hilarious. Oh, I hate public speaking. But it's just the lies that continued. But when they came out, and I guess it was April, or I guess it was May, when they finally put out the reward poster for Vanessa. And I was like, dang, within weeks, you've got this poster out there for her. Not that she doesn't deserve it, and not that her family didn't fight too, but where's Greg's? And I called CID, and I was like, what happened to Greg's reward? Where is it? And a day later, it magically appears. They email it to me, and it's posted around. Now, my friend Sergeant Oliver, who was with him in Korea, lives down by there. And they were out dragging the lake looking to see if he was there for me. They're looking at every dive bar there is to see if he's hiding out there, because, I mean, and they're the ones that finally called and said, we've seen posters. They're finally up. And amazingly, just a few days after that poster comes out, they get a call telling them, where he's at. And I've been to this field. I don't have any idea how people would not have noticed him being there. I mean, you look right up from there into people's bedroom windows. I mean, I don't know. Does that tell you how bad Colleen is, that they don't notice if they hear gunshots out back or smell a decomposing body, that they don't notice it? Or how uninterested people are that that's happening. There's just so much that was wrong with all of this. And the committee that went down there and did the investigation on Fort Hood, I talked to Mr. Swecker, And he just admits that everything fell through the cracks. Nothing was right. Nothing was handled the way it should be as far as an investigation on a missing person. I honestly, when I called about the car, they emailed me what my phone, they want to know what my phone number was. CID hadn't even bothered to keep my phone number to contact me. They had handed the case over to a new detective at some point, and he was very pleasant, and he tried, what he could do, but it eventually has gone back to Detective Blendon. When his friends would go out to the site where he was found, they found more remains when they went to put a cross up. How traumatizing for his friends. I mean, so they called the police back out there. They were very nonchalant. They're like, well, that could be, it could be animals. We don't know. And I found out later that the people who went out there were not trained to do this. They were not trained to recover remains. There's like 25 agencies in Texas, and on that one particular day, all 25 of them are busy. I mean, how many bodies are buried in Texas? That's crazy. I mean, and that's why when all these stories after Greg came out, I was just, Fernanda, that makes no sense. None of these stories make sense. And Greg's case is just lies upon lies from everybody. I don't know when they'll stop. I don't know. I mean, I've went on some wild goose chases trying to find him from just things people would say. And were they trying to be helpful, or were they really trying to throw us off track? I am not the person who immediately distrust I did not used to be the person who immediately distrusted what people said. And so when people would call and tell me they were sad and upset and wanted information, I told them what I knew. Nowadays I understand that they were probably trying to see how close we were maybe to finding out that they were involved. It's I can't live in that world where people are trying to throw me off track, and I don't know how to navigate it. So I've just kind of shut down from everybody. I don't talk to them. When they went back out Father's Day, I guess, or Mother's Day weekend this past year, and they found more remains. And this is after the funeral. 14 or 24 more bones were found. How did nothing ever come from the medical examiner saying that we do not have all of him? You need to go back and find the rest of him. Maybe that's the clue. It took months of fighting and calling Senator Inhofe here in Oklahoma and people in Texas and the colonel and all these people to get him removed from the AWOL list. They told me that until the medical examiner could prove that he died on that day and was never AWOL, that they couldn't remove the AWOL status. And I was like, that's just ridiculous. He died months ago and then suddenly shows up in this field. That makes no sense. I mean, can we just use, I know the military is not known for it, but can we try some common sense? This is not, it was just a constant fight. And then all of a sudden one day, Colonel Keep thinking Colonel Mustard in the alley. I don't know. Colonel somebody down there calls me. He's in charge of PR, so you already know he's full of bull. Calls to tell me there's been new evidence found, and there's new evidence found, and they're going to allow him to have the military funeral. So I mean, I was excited thinking there's new evidence. I was like, they finally found something that's going to give me some answers. So I called, I don't even remember who all I called. I talked to somebody at one of the stations down there. I talked to Senator Inhofe's office. Senator Inhofe and my dad were actually more in contact. And Senator Inhofe had actually called and said they were going to allow Greg to have all of his military benefits and the funeral, but they didn't know anything about new evidence. They were going to try to find out. The police, after I talked to the reporter and told them that apparently new evidence has been found, they're going to allow Greg to be brought home. Suddenly the police department's calling saying, we don't know what you're talking about. What new evidence? And there wasn't any. The military lied. They just, I think, got tired of me calling, got tired of the news shows, got tired of everything going on, and thought it's got to be better to just let this go, which is not necessarily the way I wanted my son to get his funeral, but it got it. I was like, at this point, I don't care why you all changed your mind. I'm glad you cleared his name. It doesn't matter what went on or anything that went on with my child. He did not deserve to be treated like this, in life or death. I mean, if you guys will treat him like that, I don't know. I don't want to get into that part, but it's just, I don't think the military cared anymore. He was getting out. They were done with him, and it didn't matter anymore. They just thought I wouldn't raise a stink. I wouldn't cause issues. And I'm not a person who will go out and yell off the rooftops, but I won't leave you alone. I will bug you until you fix whatever is wrong. And this was wrong. And it's been wrong on every other one after him. It was wrong on Vanessa. It was wrong on Brandon Rosecrans. It was wrong on Fernandez. It was wrong on, I'm sorry, I can't even remember all the names after him. There were so many. It's just, they just lie. And they can't ever just say, we don't know, we'll work on it, we'll figure it out. They just tell you a lie to get you to try and leave them alone and hopefully go away. And what they've run into now is a bunch of moms and dads and brothers and sisters who won't go away. And they don't know how to deal with that. We may not be able to sue the government, but we can sure make it hard on them. This whole thing is just, as you said, it's just trauma all the time, because every time something happens, it brings up. Greg has a little brother who looks exactly like him. And people will call and say, we saw Greg. You know, he's at Walmart. And he's not. I've had psychics reach out to me to try to tell me things, and I guess some of it's a little bit of a comfort. That him and Vanessa are up in heaven, making sure nobody else gets treated like this. For some reason, my child always wanted to be Hispanic. So I guess when he married Penny, he took her last name so he could be Morales. And I never understood, but it made him happy. So whatever it takes, right? It, he was never a leader. He was somebody who was the grunt worker, the one who did the work. And my hope was the military would help him become a little bit more of a leader so he wouldn't have to always be the workhorse. That didn't happen. That's just his personality. He's very laid back, very relaxed. And I'm sure I missed a lot of things, but that's Greg's story. He was everybody's friend. He's the guy at 3 in the morning who would go and help you if you called him. And he's gone. Oh, goodness. Okay.
Wow.
Everybody take a deep breath.
Let's just take a
Everybody-
deep breath.
I'm serious. Take a deep breath and like, gotta activate. You gotta move that trauma like out of your body by like. Serious, Kim, when you're feeling it, just hug yourself. You know, hold yourself, hold your heart. Maybe put your hand on your heart and your other hand on your shoulder.
I'm gonna try that
Because that
right now.
movement helps move that trauma. Just for your information, Kim, I'm in graduate school to be a therapist and I'm learning all these techniques for
That actually feels
processing
really
trauma.
nice.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Or you can put one hand on your forehead and the other one on your heart. Like, who holds their head anymore? Like, our head needs to be held, our face needs to be held. And this just kind of communicates that your body is your container and you're contained, you're safe, you're real, and you're alive, but you're safe.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
I mean, wow. And his death is still under investigation right now.
It is. Like I said, they just recently found those 24 more bones.
That,
and I'm
how
like,
recent was that again?
that was just this summer, past summer, or it was June or July. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with them? I mean, I've already had this funeral and buried him. It's not like I can go dig him up and put him in there. So we actually donated them to the guy that found him so they could use his bones to practice so they could find other people. I didn't even know that was a thing. But so Greg's still helping people.
It's so
So-
special.
What do you think happened to your son? Do you have any, like, I mean, like, here's first of all, let me just say, like, first of all, I've been taking notes. So I know Terry's been taking notes too. I mean, I hear you say the same things that I hear myself say, but I'm just gonna ask the question. Do you feel like you've had to be your own investigator? And I mean, I know, yeah, I mean, from day one, like, I hear you talking about the missing person report shenanigans. Just there's so many things that I didn't know all of these details. And it's just what they drag us through. That's abusive. That's so abusive what they drag us. And I love what Kimberly said at the beginning, where you talked about how our military folks should be held to a higher standard. And so with that in mind, our Gold Star families, you know, I mean, like, for us to be treated in such a way, for your son, I'll never forget hearing about Gregory being found. And then, oh, first of all, it was the AWOL thing, right? And then his body's been found. And then they wouldn't give him military honors or funeral or whatever. And I was so mad. I was so angry. I was probably screaming and hollering. Let me just tell you, I won't show you what that looks like right now. But I can tell you that it made me I was so horrified for what you were going through. And they would just slap you in the face like that. And if I'd have known all the things that you had been doing this whole time, and then they found him, and they're not even telling you about the car that they found, and pertinent information and evidence is being withheld from you. And that screams a huge cover up to me. And I say, what are they holding back? The funeral that you think they just gave it to you? No, I think that they found some things, and yeah, they gave it to you because they found some things they don't want anybody to know. They don't want anybody to know.
What they found, I'm sure, is that I had asked for help for him before this ever happened. And the chain of command for him didn't do anything. They didn't help him. I was like, you guys have taken my child who has never really had to be an adult. You've trained him in all of these things, but you've taken him away from his parent. And I understand he's 20 something, but you have to become that parent. His drill sergeant, his NCOs, they all have to take on that role. And they failed him every step of the way. They failed him with this. They let him you know, they used to say, if the Army wanted you to have a wife, they'd issue you one. I mean, he married this girl who I still don't know. Just, you know, and this was right after something had come out about all these soldiers marrying people, or people marrying soldiers for benefits, and all of this. And,
Yeah.
you know, and then involved, and go back to Kimberly's question, he was involved in stuff he shouldn't have been. I know he was, because he was trying to find money. There's a lot of talk about drug use that he was trying to help support. There was, you know, for $100 you can go on base and buy a new Social Security number. There was somebody on base selling Social Security numbers for $100. He was with this gang-looking group of people. There's just too many things. And like I said, Greg, he gets sucked into this stuff. And the Army, you know, people in the Army, if they really truly knew him and were trying to help him, would have noticed all of this going on. But no, instead, they just, whatever. And it's the same thing with Vanessa's story, whatever. You know, young girl shows up on a day off and suddenly vanishes. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what's going on with these young people. Do I think my son is completely innocent? No. It was obvious he was involved in things he shouldn't have been. That doesn't mean he deserved to die. And what I think happened is he finally realized what he was doing, and he told them no, and they killed him. Either over him not running drugs, him not doing something with sex trafficking. I don't know what. There's so many things in Killeen that are just wrong. And I would imagine at some point it finally hit him that I don't need to be doing this anymore. And you don't tell these people no. And because the other options of what might have happened, I don't know. I'm not sure I can handle finding out that his wife had something to do with it, or that the people who claim they care about him had something to do with it, because he's got all these people down there who claim to be brothers and sisters, and I've met them. They're very nice people. And I would hate to think that people plant seeds and they get stuck in my head, and I don't know if they're doing it to pull me off the track or what's going on. But yeah, it was a very about face thing about no, you can't have the funeral. And the funeral wasn't my issue. The getting the AWOL and deserter status cleared was my issue. He was going to come home and have a funeral no matter what. But I didn't want him to have his name to be, stuck with AWOL and deserter. It just, that's not what happened. It wasn't right. And I understand protocol. I truly do. Like I said, my dad, 20 years military. I understand what the rules and regulations are. But in this case, you should just listen. Sometimes you need to listen to the moms. You need to listen to family. You can usually tell which ones are hiding them, and they really are AWOL, I think. And honestly, I'm not good enough liar to have pulled that off if that's what was happening, which is what they kept trying to insinuate at the beginning, is that I knew where he was. And I said, if I knew where he was, I wouldn't be up 24 hours trying to find him. I wouldn't be falling asleep at work because I stayed up all night on Facebook hoping he came on, trying to email and text friends to say, have you seen him? I mean, it's just the levels of stupidity in the military and the levels of deceit. And it's not that I'm anti-military. I'm just pretty much anti-Fort Hood and the people who are running it. And I know there are other bases. I truly do know other bases have issues, but I haven't had to deal with them. And see, look at me hitting my heart. It's just hard. And for it to keep happening, and you have an investigation of Jackie Spears, Congressman Spears, she knows what's going on down there. And I know one person of the White House and the Capitol can't fix everything, but they know what's going on. And standing around saying, we're going to change it, we're going to fix this, and everybody's now we're quit worrying about being deployed. We're all going to stand around and sing kumbaya and whatever and become friends. That didn't happen. It didn't happen. And when Colonel White came back, or whatever, I don't even know what rank he is, or from overseas, and they had the big thing on the parade ground, that was hard to watch because I didn't believe him. It wasn't something that I felt was sincere. It was a show. And I felt like everything that's been done since then is just putting on a show and a front, which is more lies and more hiding. And then they call and tell me in an effort to be transparent, we wanted to call and tell you this is what's going on. You didn't tell me anything. And you're not being transparent. And we're going to call you every week and give you updates. I haven't heard from them in months. I mean, a year. And it's just, why set yourself up to be a liar? You're not going to call me every week. Call me if you need something, would have at least held something to me. It would have meant something instead of telling me you're going to check in with me to make sure I'm okay. You don't care that I'm okay. If you did, you would have found my son. You would have followed up with him. And of course, when you say those things to people who are not used to being talked back to, they just start ignoring you. I don't. You know, mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys is BS. Don't let them grow up to be soldiers, especially go to Fort Hood. Oh my goodness. I can't find anybody who has ever been to Fort Hood that has something good to say about it. In 40 years, God, I'm older than that now. I'm old, and people who were there before I was born can't find anything good to say about it. Not one thing.
I was at Fort Hood for a week for some training by myself. And there's just that feeling of dread in the air. I felt self-conscious walking around like I might have been a target. And I just didn't feel comfortable there. And I hadn't heard any stories about it prior to going there. There's just a feeling in the air. I wonder if it's, there's been talk, that it might be cursed land from prior indigenous communities. I mean, you can't ever say that that's not true, because like, what the hell is going on there, especially if your father said that shit like that was happening when he was in the army at Fort Hood.
Right after Greg disappeared, his sisters and her family, her husband's in the military, and they were going to be stationed at Fort Hood. And I said, if there is any way you can fight that, fight it. Do not take your family to Fort Hood. And fortunately, they didn't have to go. But
I was following a guy to Fort Hood. There was another sergeant that was a friend of mine, and he's like, I'm going to Fort Hood. I mean, we just didn't know. This was back in 2003. I mean, I guess I didn't know this army that's happening right now, even though this shit has been going on for decades. I was lucky enough to see the good in the military during my career. So I followed him, like I was going to re-enlist for Fort Hood. And then all of a sudden something happened with his orders. So I was able to change my re-enlistment contract. And I wonder if that saved my life now that I'm hearing all these stories.
there is a lot of good about the military, as long as
Right.
you find the right people and the right places to. And it's just like any place in life. If you land in the wrong place, you've got to be strong enough to stay away from the negative. And
I think, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I don't think Greg was strong enough away from family, and he didn't find new family down there. And that's the difference between the military, 40 years ago and the military now is, it used to be family. And now it's each man for himself. It is truly an army of one. Everyone is out for themselves. Now, of course, there are exceptions to that, I'm sure. I haven't seen them lately. My middle son went in the military and he got out. He's like, he couldn't even, he's like, no.
Wow.
He didn't even, he got to AIT and and my younger son, who has always dreamed of going to the military, is like, hell no, I'm not going now.
Oh,
no way.
The military betrayed your family so badly.
Exactly. They failed him on every level and they failed us.
And then, like you said, he was a follower and he probably wasn't strong enough to do the things that he wanted to. And we've talked about this before. It's like these good guys, these nice guys who are in the military, they're getting pounced on by like narcissists, people that can see that I can take advantage of this person
Yes.
to the point of killing them. And I find it a big coincidence. I don't want to make assumptions or anything like that. Talking about Penny, I actually listened to her interview with Catch the Killer podcast.
Yeah.
And this was the first time I've ever heard her talk or hear her story. And honestly, the way she talked about Gregory, she sounded sincere. Like she said, he was a good guy. He would do anything for you, you know. I felt sincerity, but then at the same time, a month after they decide they're going to get a divorce and she's moving out, he goes missing. And before he gets out of the military. So there's access to money.
Yeah.
Is that something you've ever confronted?
She swear, I mean, she, you know, that's probably a whole different story there, but she came up for the funeral. I don't know if she never made it to the actual funeral. She came to the graveside. She didn't make it to the church. She was supposed to meet me for lunch, and she was like 4 hours late. And that through that whole, and when we did finally talk, she's like, I just want you to know I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I don't care what people say. I didn't do it. Because there had been a lot of talk about, you know, people really bashing her on Facebook. And to this day, I don't know if she did or didn't. I did ask, and my dad also asked if there's a way once she gets the money, can you track if a large chunk of it goes to somebody? You know, if she gives one lump sum payment to somebody else, here's a red flag.
Yeah.
And she apparently got however much it is, you know, almost a year ago. But yet she called me on Memorial Day asking for a loan. I'm like, where has all the money gone? I said, you have literally spent all of that money already. And then when she got arrested for the assault from the dating app guy, she's talking about, she does, I mean, she's living in her car. She has no money. It just, something just doesn't add up.
Like someone took advantage of her. Like, I'll kill Gregory and you give me the money because I told you so. If they're hanging out with gangster type of people, somebody could have overtook her, you know.
Well, I'm not.
I mean,
yeah, I'm not a prudish
that's
mom.
just the stuff that right.
But, you know, my son didn't hang out at strip clubs until he got down there. And like I said, he's a 20-year-old guy. He's going to do what he's going to do with his money, which is my understanding is where he met her. And she's not shy about saying that she's worked as a stripper. But it's like, I found out later, I actually thought Penny was this person that I had talked to on the phone with him. And because he had talked about getting an apartment with this girl and moving off base and all of this. And I thought it was Penny because they got married shortly after this conversation. It wasn't Penny. It was somebody else. So a few weeks before he gets married to Penny, he's talking about moving in with somebody else. And she's pregnant and they're going to live happily ever after. And then, of course, I'm like, wait a minute. You were pregnant? Do I have a grandchild somewhere? She's like, no, I lost the baby and we broke up. And then like a few weeks later, he marries Penny. No red flag there at all, huh? Yeah, she's admitted she has a drug problem. Greg didn't make enough money to support a drug problem. So he's out working a second job. He's out. Yeah, he got sucked into the underworld of Colleen. And she took him there. Um, it's not above Greg to pawn some stuff if he owned it and found it, but to start doing some, hanging out with the people he was, this didn't make sense.
It's clear that there's so much more to the story that is not being told. And to me, it's clear that she's involved. And yeah, she showed him a certain side of Colleen. And I don't know what she did with that money. I can't imagine. But if she's living in the kind of life that she's been living in, then I guess maybe I can start to kind of imagine a little bit. But it does definitely make you ask more questions.
Well, there's a lot of questions. I just can't get any.
Right?
She posted on Facebook about all the money that her dear sweet husband had left her, and that she had gone out and bought a new Lexus SUV and all these things. But then she told me when she called and I asked about the money, she goes, well, I never got the money. Because at that lunch right before his funeral, she had told me that I was trying to set up some kind of nonprofit or a fund or something in Greg's name to help people. And she was like, well, I'll give you some of the money. I was like, gee, thanks. But so that's not the point. You guys are getting divorced. It's after he came back from Kuwait, when they're in the middle of a divorce, that he changed his beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that don't make sense. And the military has completely screwed themselves by allowing them to go online and change that information now. Because if she has his password, she could have gone in and changed it to anything she wanted.
Whoa, I did not know that.
Oh yeah,
That is frightening.
Yeah,
she had said on that
you had to go in person and fill out paperwork, and now you can just do it on. And they're setting themselves up.
She had passwords to some of his accounts.
She did.
She was looking.
She was looking on his phone. She's looking everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow. To me, it looks pretty cut and dry from where I'm sitting, thinking about the field, thinking about where he was found. And to me, it's weird that is it the Colleen Police Department that didn't do the exhuming his body properly from his natural grave?
Yeah, well, they didn't do it properly, but yes, it was Colleen Police.
Okay. Yeah, they also were responsible for, remember Christina, her brother was found, Christopher Ferguson, am I correct with that name? Yeah, Corporal Christopher Ferguson, he was found, the Colleen Police Department nor the Army did an investigation of his death.
Right.
And so I just keep hearing Colleen Police Department and their failures. I think somebody needs to investigate the Colleen Police. And it seems to me there is some underhandedness going on in the Colleen Police Department. Hi, Colleen Police Department. I'm Heather Baker. Feel free to contact me with your comments. I have some questions for you. Big time.
When this first came about, somebody actually called and told me that basically the police was in the pocket of all the local gangs, and so if this was gang related, that I could, forget it.
Yeah.
Lots of helpful, wonderful people out there giving me such great advice, but
Yeah, advice like, soldiers go AWOL every day,
Actually,
when they're about to,
there was
leave.
one
Weird.
the detective in charge actually told me, because I was like, can you not ping his phone? Can you not pull up his all this new technology, you see on TV, some of it has to be accurate. And she's like, well, I know we're a big town, but we really don't have a lot of that kind of stuff that we can access. We have to go to the base for them to be able to do that kind of technology to track that stuff. But in that report that came out that Congress sent them down there to do, they came back and said CID was so underfunded down there and understaffed and such young people, and they had no equipment. They had no up-to-date equipment to be able to track and do that stuff. And I'm like, okay, we all lying now. I mean, Colleen's lying about CID. CID's telling these people we don't have the information. And I'm thinking, how many people went missing where it was discussed that they pinged their phone and told them that they were in, I don't know, up north somewhere. They weren't missing. They were up north, and it's St. Louis, somewhere in Illinois or something. And it turns out his body was on base. Had gone off on had a car wreck off one of those back roads on base and was there, but they were telling him his phone was pinging in Illinois, but they don't have the equipment to track it. So more lies, and not just with Greg, but with everybody. And when does it stop? When do you all get together and say, you know what, this is stupid. We either have to all get the same lie or we got to quit telling them. I mean,
Yeah, they're getting real
Right,
sloppy, aren't they?
they are.
It's pretty embarrassing. They should be very embarrassed.
Better at you
Yeah.
get better at it the more you practice. And if Fort Hood and Colleen have been this like cesspool of crime for who knows how long, yeah, it's obviously, yeah, there's definitely some corruption going on.
You'd think they'd be better at it.
Right. You guys are all these like big organizations, but you guys can't keep a story together, or you don't know how to, get over on the families yet. They're still outsmarting you.
Well, Ford talked about the turnover in CID was so frequent and they were so undertrained that even if they had somebody there who truly wanted to do the job right, they hadn't been trained to do it, first of all. And second of all, in the middle of it, they'd be transferred to another base somewhere, probably as the captain. And, nothing would ever get followed up on, or nothing ever got done, or they didn't know how to do it. And the only people there who knew how to do it were people who were stuck doing paperwork and filing instead of training.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
has to come a point where somebody stands up and says, look, we have screwed up for 20 years. We are sorry. We're going to make it right from here on out. And getting rid of the lady who was the head of the CID was probably a smart move to start with. Probably should have happened years ago.
she was tap dancing so bad.
She was awful when they interviewed her. I almost got to the point I felt bad because she was so out of the loop and had no clue what they were asking her. She was making women look bad. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to remember his name and I can't, but the command sergeant major of the MP brigade, who retired right before the investigation of Fort Hood.
Yes.
He was involved when he was a first sergeant many moons ago. One of his NCOs killed a soldier named Specialist Kamisha Block.
Yes.
And look where he ended up and look at the state of things under his MPs. And he was allowed to retire, and you know what? I can't find a trace of him on the internet.
I'm sure he was hiding.
That's probably a wise idea for him. God bless him.
You know, and that's what, you know, people always chanting, close Fort Hood, close Fort Hood. I don't, you know, they don't understand that all that means is we're just shifting the problems to some base. They're not going to get rid
Right.
of soldiers. They're just going to move them somewhere else. Here's the thought. Why don't you make Fort Hood the place where you dump everybody, which seems like they have, and you can get rid of them. Fort Hood's
Right.
where soldiers go to
Um,
motto.
oh,
You know,
that breaks my heart.
I mean, what is the motto of that place? That the good place
Oh,
or
A great place.
great,
oh hell.
right. It's so great place.
Certainly
Yeah,
not
the
a
great
safe
place.
And you know, where Caleb died is Fort Bragg, and I always say they don't have anything to brag about. Nothing.
I agree.
And there's no bliss at Fort Bliss, and there's
Nope. And trust
It's all
me,
an illusion, folks.
the Norfolk Naval Base, we call that Little Fort Hood,
oh Lord.
because that's where my son died, and a lot of sailors died. But I do have a couple questions, if you don't mind me asking,
No.
if that's okay. You mentioned the car was towed. Do you know how they found his car before it was towed? Did somebody call it in?
I believe because it was in the cul-de-sac of that neighborhood that Greg was found behind.
Oh,
So
I see. So it was a street.
It was on a street, and I think what they said was somebody called in and said, "Hey, this car's been sitting here for 4
Got it.
days. Come get it."
I get it. Okay, then that makes sense. If you don't mind me asking, and you don't have to answer the question, what remains did they find first? Do you know?
I don't really know. All I was told, they called me the day before they announced that it was Greg, and just said they had found somebody had called in a tip, and they had found some remains. And while they were pretty sure it was Greg, they weren't 100%, because everybody kept saying it was Vanessa, and they're like, no, these bones are too old to be Vanessa. And that's how everything kept getting wrapped up in their two stories together.
Right.
But all they told me was they were scattered. Like, I mean, if they'd been out there for almost a year in the wind and the rain, and I've had night, well, it's weird. It's not something I normally do, but until they found those last 24 bones, I had nightmares almost every night about him being out there. Oh. As soon as they found those, they stopped.
Oh,
So I know he was telling me that he was still there.
I
But
agree.
they never told me what they found. They never told me they didn't find all of him until people started going out there to put flowers or something out, and they would come back and say, we found, a neck bone, or we found something. And there's probably 3 or 4 trips that people did that. They would call and tell me they had found more bones.
Such negligence.
So
Oh,
I'm assuming they did what they did to Vanessa. Chopped him up.
it's possible. They never have said that. That's all still part of the investigation, I guess. I still don't know if it was a gunshot. I don't know if he was, beaten. I don't know anything.
The
Because-
autopsy. Oh, go ahead.
I was of course they never really found clothing, I guess, or course, there's not, after that long blood and
Right.
nothing.
So the
But no
autopsy,
clothing.
the,
Sorry.
the autopsy doesn't say anything either, does it?
I have no idea. I've seen it. They
Oh,
won't.
you haven't seen it?
They won't release it because it's still
Ongoing.
ongoing. And we did go down and, like I said, when we were in Colleen, we were there August 1st of 20. I don't even know. It's been so long. We talked to the detective and, we told him, I said, this is what we've heard. And he goes, I cannot confirm or deny, but you could just kind of tell by the look on his face that some of the rumors we had heard were true. And one of them being he had been shot in the head. It was just basically an execution from what we were told. And like I said, he did not confirm that. He didn't deny it, but
You could tell.
at us like, how do you know that? And I'm like, you have no idea how many people in this town talk if you would just go out and listen.
So,
Listen.
when you were looking for him, do you know what Penny was doing? Was she looking for him too? Or was she just kind of in the background doing pretend work?
I have no idea. She told me that it was probably 4 or 5 days after they had talked to me that they went to talk to her and asked if she knew where he was. And she said she didn't even know he was missing. But I texted her, saying, Greg didn't show up. Do you know where he's at? Where can we look for him? Do you know anything? And she's like, yeah, they just came to the house today and told me he was missing or something. It was just something completely random. You would think after she's been arrested 2 or 3 times since this happened, you would think they could have got something out of her.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But no.
Right. What do you know what her reaction was when they found him?
I have never talked to her.
So she wasn't with you at all.
No, she was still down there playing house. And she lived on base for up until just recently, is what I understand. They never moved. She got arrested for the animal cruelty. She was still on base. And she just kept living. I don't know if she wasn't. I have no idea. I was like, I always kind of thought they gave you a couple months and then you
They
had to be.
do.
But she was there over a year, 2 years after he passed.
Okay, that's interesting.
So but no, I have no idea what her reaction was. She never really
Said anything.
said anything. She would put things on Facebook occasionally, but I don't know her. I don't know even if what she tells me is the truth or a lie. I've met her in person 3 times now. And the first time was when Greg was denying they were married. I didn't really.
Have you, okay, so for the life insurance, I'm just gonna ask you this. If she did change his life insurance at some point in time, have you ever thought of going to SGLI and finding out when that paperwork was submitted and changed?
We did. And they're the ones that told us it was in January of 2019 that it was changed. Most people adjust that and change it when they're going to Kuwait or Afghanistan, and he waits to change it to when he's back. When he was before he went to Kuwait, they came up here and he had told me that if something happens to him in Kuwait, his brothers are going to be rich because his money was going to them. just being a little smart aleck. And then all of a sudden it's all going to her. And it's like, if they were happily married and all in love and all that, okay. But you took your brothers off to put her on it when you're getting divorced. And so we called and we had the police check it out, or they say they checked it out. We had our CAO check it out. We called down there and said, there's something just not right about this. And they're like, it's all got the right, time stamps and dates and IP addresses. And I said, yeah, but if she has his password, that's not valid either. And we got nowhere with that one. And that was, again, the least of my issues at the time. So
Understandable.
but I'm just saying the Army, all the military has set themselves up for a huge mess with that. I mean, and not unless it's a thumbprint or something that you have to put in there to change it on a computer. Anybody who has their password could be on that thing next. So
That's true.
you just have to wonder, the government didn't think of that.
Of course not. Of course not. What a mess. I am so sorry for your loss and what you have endured as a Gold Star family and how the Army treated you and Gregory. And I am appalled that they did not look for him and just automatically considered him AWOL. It doesn't matter if he was the best soldier or the worst soldier. They did not give him a priority when he went missing. And that needs to change. Fort Hood needs to change. And just firing a command is not good enough. It's not, because all they do is they just move them and then they're going to go do this somewhere else. And that has to stop. Justice for Gregory and everybody else in Fort Hood would be to hold them accountable. And when I say accountable, bring them down to a private and throw them in prison, because this is straight up murder, in my opinion. Sorry. And what they did to you and Gregory, I don't even have words to say of what should happen to them because of that. That is unacceptable. And they need to be held accountable. I am so sorry that you lost your son in this way. This was unacceptable.
Thank you. I'm sorry any of us had. It's just, oh, it's so hard to just see how many families have lost their kids, not because of war, but that's the hard part. I mean, you always expect the phone call that they were killed in action or they were killed overseas or something happened. You never expect to find out they went to a bar and met some friends and never came home. It's just.
Do you know who those friends were that he met in that bar? Do you have any idea?
No. The few names that popped up, we have turned into the police, but they say they've, tracked it, checked. I can't go down there and arrest these people, and the police aren't going to help. Or honestly, I don't know if this will ever be solved, because I don't know that enough people down there with the ability to solve it care. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
So we need people with integrity
Yep.
that know about this to step forward. And we know that you are still out there. And it's eating away at your heart every day and every night when you go to sleep. The facts behind Gregory Morales' death are eating away at you.
Come clean,
It's time to come clean.
clear your
Come forward.
conscience.
We have a mother that needs to
Closure,
have, yes.
answers. She deserves closure and answers.
And you know, we all are sitting here staring right at you, Fort Hood,
Yep.
Clean Police Department, and we're calling your bluff. All the BS, all the bamboozling. We know that you're doing it to us. Stop it.
Yep.
You're not gonna like what
Okay.
happens because we're gonna
Because
say
every-
names. Hello. You didn't redact us, and we are not. We we didn't sign the non-disclosure agreements. Bring it.
As a
Bring
matter
it.
of fact, why don't you contact Locked and Loaded Diaries and come on the show and tell your side of the story?
Absolutely, we're here to listen and ask questions. But we
Exactly.
demand answers.
Yep. I think that would be a great idea if y'all just came forward and said, hey, we want to be on your show and we want to tell our side of the story. There's always two sides of every story. We'd like to hear yours.
But more importantly, just watch these sweet little gold star ladies just take you down brick by brick. Because we know the truth.
Yep.
Heather's gonna
And
get
every
a
week,
door.
every week, we're gonna have another story. And we're never gonna run out of content, unfortunately.
Right.
Because this has been happening for a long time and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Nauseating.
It is. And if anybody out there has a story, contact us. We'll have you on. We have no problem. You have a story of military injustices, contact Locked and Loaded Diaries. We'll listen.
You can reach us on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. I guess we're missing a Snapchat. I don't know.
Oh, we should get a
But-
Snapchat going.
Nobody understands
And
Snapchat.
I don't.
I have no idea. No idea.
Oh my goodness.
And at the end of April, Locked and Loaded Diaries, yours truly, will be in Las Vegas for Crime Con.
Oh,
And
wow.
there are going to be crime enthusiasts from wall to wall. And we're going to tell every single one of them what the hell is going on in the military. Because American citizens need to know this. And I don't think they know. They're not paying attention. The media, puts out some stuff here and there. But like, families, I've heard of families reaching out to like big networks like Nancy Grace and CNN or Fox or whoever, crime channels, and they're not biting for some reason. They don't want to tell these stories.
The DOD doesn't want to blemish on their image.
Right.
actually
And
thought-
I think
2020 and Nancy Grace, but it all spins back around to Vanessa's story. Greg gets a little piece, and every piece,
yeah.
I think they also are, they've covered it, so they're moving on. And that's unfortunate
Right.
for families.
Well, we're not. And that's part of why
We're
we're
not.
here, Kim. We are the link in the chain that was broken for our soldiers and sailors, airmen and Marines, Coast Guard, you know, our service members, and we are not gonna leave you behind. And you mentioned earlier about just, you know, the feelings of shutting down and, you know, just closing yourself away from everybody. And I want you to know that we're so grateful that you chose to open yourself up to us and let us be a platform for you to speak in. And I know that it wasn't very easy for you, and I love you very much. And I'm really sorry for what happened to you, your whole family, and to your son. And we will never forget. And I will continue to raise the flag of justice for Gregory Wedel.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
And if you think of anything else that you need to say, let us know.
I will. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Or if there's any updates or anything, we would love to have you back on.
If I get an update, I'll be shouting it to the world. So
Good for you.
And we're here for you.
Yes.
Just, we're always here for you. We have time for you. So just, you know, give us a phone call, text message. We love you.
We were very honored to have you on. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Greg, thanks you for listening.
We love you, Gregory. Say hi to Caleb for me.
And Brandon.
They're all up there drinking and
Aw.
partying, having a good time.
Yeah. Kimberly, do you want to close us out?
Sure. So Locked and Loaded Diaries audience, if you know something, say something. Gregory could have been your son, your brother, or your best friend. Wouldn't you want someone to speak up for you and your loved one? Do the right thing. It's just really hard for me to comprehend people that, you know, I understand if you're frozen by fear or whatever, but you've got to rise above that and do the right thing, because it's gonna take a hold of you. It's probably already got its claws around you. You probably have PTSD yourself if you're involved and you know something. It's going to take an effect on your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual self, your soul. Don't take this to the grave. You probably would feel so much better if you got this off your chest and did this for Kim. That was her boy. What if you had a child? What if you do have children? Parents, local authorities, you military folks, somebody knows something. Do the right thing, because it could happen to you tomorrow. You're not that far out of reach. And it seems like these things are senseless, so it won't make sense. You're like, it wouldn't happen to me because that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Please go to Justice for Gregory Wedel Morales on Facebook, or reach out to the Clean Police Department or Fort Hood CID if you know something. Please join us next week for I have our very own Gold Star sister, Tanya O'Neill Grief, whose son was killed, Specialist Mason Weber. He's 22 years old. These young kids we are just destroying generations. This is generational trauma. you know, and guess what happens when you do the right thing and you tell somebody what happened? You heal people, and healing has a ripple effect. When you heal someone, they can heal others. Otherwise, we're clogged up with this trauma, and it's hard to trust someone. It's hard to love people. So you are a very important piece of the puzzle if you know something. But we have Tanya on next week to talk about her son, Mason Weber, who was killed doing maintenance on a Bradley in a motor pool. Guess where? Fort Hood. Fort Hood, we're watching you. Even though the media is not paying attention anymore and everybody else ain't paying attention, we're paying attention, and we ain't gonna stop. You're gonna have to kill us. Shut us up. And I'm sure any three of us would be willing to take one for the team, because we're doing the right thing, and we're demanding justice for Gold Star families, because they put their life on the line to serve this country, and when they die, you just shrug it off. Yeah, because we're another number. We're just a number. We're pawns in the big game. We know that, but we're not going to take that lying down. We're going to stand up for ourselves and for one another. We ain't going nowhere. We just started this game, bitches. See you guys next week. Colonel Mustard in the alley. Good night.
Good night. Love you guys.